Hello, I'm Riley Carlson. We want to bring you the latest details on Gaza ceasefire negotiations happening in Egypt. President Donald Trump said in just the last few minutes that he may travel to the Middle East this weekend as his negotiators try to finalize the ceasefire proposal.
They're doing very well. We have a great team over there, great negotiators, and there are unfortunately great negotiators on the other side also. But it's something I think that will happen, got a good chance of happening. I may go there sometime toward the end of the week, maybe on Sunday, actually, and we'll see. But there's a very good chance negotiations are going along very well. We're dealing with Hamas and many of the countries. As you know, we have all of the Muslim countries are included. All of the Arab countries are included. Very rich countries and some that are not so rich, but just about everybody's included. It's never happened before. Nothing like that's happened before. And our final negotiation, as you know, is with Hamas. And it seems to be going well. So we'll let you know.
Alan Fisher joins us live now from Washington, D.C. Alan, why would the president decide to go to Egypt or to the Middle East at this point in the negotiation process?
Well, let's be clear, nothing's firm yet. He said there is the possibility that they would go late on Saturday, possibly on Sunday as well. Before he went into the meeting that you saw at the White House, he said he'd been speaking to his teams in the Middle East. Clearly, there are grounds for optimism that things are moving forward. But as we've said many times over the last 2 years, there is no deal until there's a deal. So there's still a lot of talking to be done, a lot of technical work to be done. Donald Trump would very much like to be part of any peace deal in the Middle East. And clearly, while the negotiators are in the Middle East, he is some distance away. So he would like to be there for the final part of that, for any signing of a deal. But there's still a lot of ground to cover. He said that there are good negotiators on his team, but there are also good negotiators on the other side. And so the 20-point plan that he unveiled is clearly the basis for the ongoing discussions. But no one has just accepted that as something that can be implemented tomorrow. There's got to be some discussion about the technicalities of all of that. That's clearly what's underway in Sharm el-Sheikh at the moment, and clearly what Donald Trump is keeping an eye on, hoping that there'll be enough progress so he can fly to the Middle East, either late on Saturday, on Sunday. But yet again, just confirming, nothing has been finalized as far as his travel arrangements are concerned.
Now, Alan, this president has made a point of saying that he wants these negotiations to happen quickly. Do you think that there's a chance that he wants to put some pressure on the negotiations here to make sure that they are moving along as smoothly as he wants them to?
Well, how many times since he came back to the Oval Office on the 20th of January this year has he said that he expects a deal to be done soon, that he wants it to be sorted quickly, that there is pressure on the Israelis, that there's pressure on Hamas? He has said it several times. It appears this time there is something more concrete because they have a 20-point plan. They have something that they can deal with. There's certainly agreement among other nations that this is a pathway forward, even though some may have some concerns about parts of the implementation of the deal, but they see this as something that they can work with. There's something that they can deal with in the long term. And so there is perhaps more optimism around this point than at any point. But of course, Donald Trump has said before that Hamas had just a number of days to absolutely agree to all 20 points, or else there would be hell to pay. He said that in the past. He said there would be a very forceful reaction if he didn't get an agreement. Clearly, there are those who are close to Hamas who are discussing with Donald Trump on a fairly regular basis, saying, look, there's movement here, there's things that we can do, there are some concerns, there's technical arrangements to be agreed. These all have to be considered and covered at some point before we can say we've absolutely got a deal. So it is perhaps optimistic, but it seems as if Donald Trump believes that something can be agreed by the weekend, and certainly he would like to see it done on a much shorter timescale than this, dragging on into the middle or late October before there's some sort of final agreement. He wants to get this done, relatively speaking, in the next few days.
All right, Alan Fisher, live for us from Washington, D.C. Alan, thank you very much. I want to bring in Yousef Munayyer now. He's the head of the Palestine-Israel program and a senior fellow at the Arab Center in Washington, D.C. He joins us from Springfield, Virginia. Yousef, thank you so much for being with us. With the president saying he may very well travel to the Middle East as these negotiations are ongoing, how much pressure does that put on the negotiations going into the next few days?
Well, look, I think on the one hand, it sends a message of optimism. This is the president saying, you know, I'd like to schedule this. I'd like to be there to see this thing get done. But at the same time, it also sends a message that he's watching closely. He remains committed to this, and he wants it to be seen through until the end. And I think that is as much a message to, the negotiators themselves, but also to, his closest ally here in Benjamin Netanyahu, that the president of the United States wants to see this get across the finish line. Now, what exactly will get across the finish line? That is the million-dollar question. Are we talking about a complete agreement? Are we talking about just an agreement on the initial part of it, which relates to the exchanges of prisoners? That is yet to be seen. It's likely the latter. But the president of the United States is signaling here very clearly that he wants to be able to make this trip and wants to have something to show for the effort. So that puts everybody, particularly Benjamin Netanyahu, on notice that he shouldn't try to wriggle out of this one once again.
Now, Yousef, a lot has been made, as you said, into these first 3 days of the negotiations about this initial line of withdrawal and the release of the captives. Is that's the starting point, it seems. Does it get easier from here, or does it get more difficult?
No, I think it gets a lot more difficult. And I think the real question is, because, look, this is a front-loaded deal for Israel, essentially. The way it was structured and what was announced by the White House is that, the Palestinians would hand over in the exchange deal all the Israeli captives that they hold, both the living and the remains of the dead as well, at the beginning of this, before other steps follow. This is supposed to happen, of course, as part of an exchange for Palestinians being held by Israelis. But once that happens, the Palestinians who, will have just given up what leverage they have in this situation, the one thing that they have that Israel really wants, they will have to trust then that the Israelis and the Americans will stick to their end of the bargain, specifically the Israelis, and that the Americans would hold the Israelis to their commitments. Now, they have very little reason to believe that is the case, and the Israelis have every opportunity and every possibility to subvert this once they have in their hands that which they want. So this is, I think, the key question. This is the easiest and earliest part. Once we get beyond that, Donald Trump can easily declare victory. He can say, look, I got the Israelis out of Gaza. I made every effort to make peace. All the Arab and Muslim countries agreed with me. But if this thing falls apart, it's really on the Palestinians and on Israel. But I did my part, and you can still, give me the Nobel Peace Prize. I think his interest in holding Netanyahu's feet to the fire would wane after that. And so we enter really difficult and dangerous territory once we get through this initial phase, if we get to and through this initial phase.
And to that point, I mean, the president has said multiple times that America sort of will be there in some capacity to police what comes out of this 20-point ceasefire plan. He said, we have a lot of strength. We've got a lot of ways to make sure that this deal is adhered to. Do you think that that's a concern for him at this point, that he's put all this time and effort into it, that he's made such a big deal out of this 20-point plan, but that if it doesn't go through, where do they go from here?
Well, look, the President Trump has emphasized time and again the plight of Israelis who are held captive in Gaza. He has, of course, talked about the tremendous destruction in Gaza as well, and how terrible that situation is. But the Israelis that are held in Gaza have really been at the forefront of his mind, at the forefront of his language. He's met with the families numerous times of Israelis who are held there. It's easy for me to imagine that once those captives are released, that he will feel that he's accomplished everything that he reasonably can accomplish. And, you know, given that his partner in this ordeal is Benjamin Netanyahu, someone who has looked for every opportunity to scuttle deals in the past, he's going to have a hard time trying to hold him to his commitments. And if there's one thing we know about Trump, it's that, you know, he moves from one subject to the other very quickly. He rarely stays focused on one thing for a long period of time. So if I had to wager a bet, who will last longer in this fight, Netanyahu, who's dedicated to dragging things out, or Trump, who's shown nothing but impatience over time, it will probably be Netanyahu.
But Yousef, of course, if that does happen, if this does break down, where does that then leave the Palestinians who are feeling the brunt of this and maybe don't have anyone else to turn to put another ceasefire in place?
Right. Well, look, the situation on the ground is only going to get worse at that point. That is why this is such a major gamble on the Palestinian side. But of course, you know, they want to see an end to this genocide. People around the world, in the Arab and Muslim world, but also the rest of the world, want to see an end to this genocide. And I think that while there is clearly an incentive for the Israeli prime minister to scuttle this, particularly after Israeli captives are released, if we get to that point, there is going to be great global outrage that will grow in response to that. If it is once again made clear, just as it was earlier this year, that the Israelis chose to break this deal after getting the captives back to continue the genocide once again.
Yousef Munayyer, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.